Welcome to the Parenting Connection. I'm Pam.
And I'm Jim.
And we're going to be doing a series of videos, one per week, and we're going to be talking about families and relationships, parenting, and giving some foundational ideas and then some more specifics on how to get along and make life a little bit easier. The videos that we're going to do are, as we said, are going to lay a foundation, and then it's going to increase our knowledge and skills as we go along. And so there'll be some new techniques that people can try if they're interested. Today we're going to be talking about differences. And we know that during this pandemic, some people are working, some people are at home, some people are with their kids, some people aren't. Some people are introverts and don't mind having long periods of time alone. Some people are extroverts.
For some people, it's like a vacation.
Right, right, exactly. And for extroverts, this is sort of hard. Do you want to talk a little bit, Jim, about what are introverts and extroverts?
Sure. An introvert is someone that just tends to keep to themselves. They're often quiet. You know, they may like to stay at home. You know, an extrovert is someone that they may like to go to school. They like to go to work. They like to be around friends and to talk.
Lots of people.
So they like to be around people. That's where they come alive.
Right, and so people are different. But what is constant about all of us is that relationships are important to us. And certain relationships with certain people and relationships within the family create sort of the template that we use when we relate to people outside of the family. And so we're going to be looking at individual differences, which this includes kids, parents, and then every family has their own sort of unique way of doing things, their own unique culture. But we all have a similar need to eat, to sleep, to be around other people, to find our talents and gifts and things that we want to express and give back to the world. First, I think we're going to talk a little bit about mealtime, because that's something we all do. We all eat, and mealtime looks very different in different houses. Jim, what was mealtime like growing up in your house?
Well, it was kind of different during the week and on the weekends. Like, I am the youngest of 8 kids, so I'm from a big family, and my dad cooked for the Army. So he ran the mess hall where all the troops eat. And so he made food for like hundreds of people sometimes, and he was really good at running that and organizing people. You know, so on weekends when some family would come back home, he would cook like a big Sunday dinner, and he always made too much food, but that's what he was used to. Mm-hmm. You know, during the week, my mom did the cooking, and she was a good cook. But if I was in my bedroom and I heard cupboard doors banging, that meant that Mom was getting dinner ready, because Mom had a lot to do and she didn't always want to cook, but she was a good cook. But when we would sit down to eat, I didn't always feel like I could talk about my day or how I felt, because I think a little bit they thought kids are best seen and not heard.
Okay, so sort of an old school way of looking at children.
A little bit traditional maybe, yeah. But I was fed. I cannot complain about that, that's for sure.
You know, a couple of years ago, we were having a face-to-face parenting group, and a man talked about in his house, he also had a big family, but he had a very small kitchen. And since he sat next to the toaster, he became the official toast maker for the family. So apparently everyone would like their bread toasted at dinner, and so they would pass it to him, and then he would distribute it to everyone. And I thought that was so interesting, because over the probably hundreds of families that we've worked with, we rarely hear the same description of mealtime. It's always something a little bit unique, and I find that to be really interesting. Now we're going to hear from another friend of ours, Olivia, and she's going to talk about what mealtime was like growing up at her house.
Hi, I'm going to talk a little bit about my mealtime at home. My name's Olivia, and mealtime for me as a child was kind of like walking on eggshells. Sort of like maybe like Forrest Gump, getting a box of chocolates and you never know what you're going to get. One of those deals. Sometimes chocolate's good, sometimes it's not so good. Mealtime at our house, my dad was in the military, so therefore we had to use our manners, excuse me, yes ma'am, no ma'am. We had to stay at the table sometimes. If my father was there for dinner, we stayed for hours at our dinner table until we finished eating whatever was on our plate. And I spent many times there. There was many tears shed some nights over peas. I never liked my peas. I still don't eat my peas. And manners were a big part. I remember some meals were very scary. I had a meal with my sister. My dad just came home. He was a truck driver then after he came out of the military. And he just got home, and he was away for months. And my sister went to go use her sleeve for her, instead of using her napkin to wipe her face. And we were all yelling, "No, no, use your napkin." And just as soon as her sleeve hit her mouth, my dad threw the table, and everyone's dinner was kind of everywhere. Dishes broken all over the floor. So mealtime at my house was not very good sometimes. Every once in a while, we did have good meal times. I remember chicken hearts, stir-fried chicken hearts. We did like those when my dad was in a good mood. Then we had kind of good times with that. But, yeah, that's basically my meal time. It's a lot different. Everybody has different meal times, but that kind of sums up. Some meal times were good, some meal times not so good.
Welcome back. Thanks, Olivia, for sharing. And it is amazing, isn't it, how different meal times can be.
Yeah, and how people remember their meal times, and they may want to change things, or they might want to replicate, especially if they don't really think much about it. They probably will do something similar.
Yeah, yeah. So next I want to introduce our sound person, Joe. You'll hear him from time to time making comments and having questions.
I won't try to butt in too often, but I'll jump in with a question or two.
Good, insightful questions. All right, so we want to ask a question here to kind of guide us. And the question is, for parents, like, why are my children so different from each other and different from me? Right? And sometimes that is nice, and then sometimes that can cause issues too.
Right, especially if parents feel like they're being disrespected because, you know, one child is very willing to do as they're told and another child not so much.
Yes, yes. Right, so we're going to talk next about temperaments. And a temperament is, you could say it's like personality. And, you know, when people are studying personalities, there are certain tests, like Myers-Briggs is one test. There's lots of personality tests. Some people are into astrology, so they may look up and see, you know, what their horoscope is for the week, and then they, you know, they try to use that to help them.
Trying to figure out how we're different from each other and why that might be. I think people are endlessly curious about what makes us unique.
Yeah, it helps us understand ourselves. So to talk about the temperaments, we're going to look at the Winnie the Pooh characters. And let's start with Winnie himself. Let's keep Tigger up right there. So here's Winnie the Pooh, and I have to tell you, these temperaments have some funny names.
Yeah, this comes sort of from an ancient way of looking at temperaments.
Yeah, these are old words. And the first word is phlegmatic. So Winnie the Pooh is phlegmatic. So what does that mean? Well, let's try to think about what we know about Winnie the Pooh from stories and cartoons. I think he's pretty easygoing. He's someone who probably likes to stay at home. He likes honey. He probably would love to take a nap. Comfort is a big deal to him. And I think peace. He wants things to be peaceful. He wants to take things on his own time. I like to take my time when I do things. And I think probably being friendly, being loyal, these are all really positive qualities of Winnie the Pooh.
He's also a thinker. He likes to think deeply about things. He's a little bit of a philosopher. There's a book called The Tao of Pooh, and you often hear little quotes from Winnie the Pooh on the internet. He's just sort of an interesting guy.
Yeah, if you have a child like this, they might be okay sitting at their desk for much of the school day.
Yeah, they're just sort of relaxed and comfortable.
Yeah, yeah.
So this is the perfect child?
No, because neither of these temperaments are positive or negative. They all have strengths, and then they all also have challenges. So, for example, with Winnie the Pooh, Jim, what are some of the things that you might struggle with a phlegmatic child?
Well, like I said, they like to take things on their own time. They don't like to rush. You know, they would prefer things to be peaceful and sort of do it their way. They're probably a little quieter, a little shyer as a person. So trying to get them to rush is probably going to annoy them, and they'll try to do things on their timetable, not yours.
So I think that phlegmatics can be very willful, but they do it in a very quiet way. So they're more resistive than they are confrontive.
Sure. Okay, let's talk about the next temperament here. All right, and here we have Tigger. Tigger is what we would call, is another funny word, sanguine. And if you have a child who's sanguine, or if you are sanguine yourself, you probably have a lot of energy, right? Is that what we remember about Tigger? He liked to bounce, right? So he's always moving, always bouncing. And that's the thing about them. They want to have fun. So every new idea they get, every new thing they look at, every new hairstyle, they want to try it all. They want to tell you what they think. They don't even know what they think until they say it. So they're constantly talking.
In motion.
They're the life of the party, right?
They tend to be popular and have lots of friends.
Yeah, because they probably know everybody. They like to talk. They're very friendly and outgoing, lots of energy. So they're just a lot of fun. They love fun adventures, right?
What are some things that might be a little bit harder when you're dealing with a sanguine child?
Well, not too long ago, and probably still, a lot of kids were being diagnosed with ADHD. And a kid who's really sanguine tends to look like they have ADHD. You know, like they're distracted, they can't focus, they can't find things, they're not organized, they can't finish a job when they start it.
Yeah, they tend to they have lots of ideas, but they tend not to follow through because they want to go on to the next thing. And so rather than like Pooh, who sort of focuses deeply on things, they tend to stay on the surface more, and they're very attractive because they always have something new, and that kind of positive energy attracts other people. But it can also become problematic because you've talked before about how they manage their friends.
Yeah, so they may make friends with someone one day, and then the next day move on. So if you're more of a phlegmatic and you're more loyal, you may feel a little bit abandoned or betrayed, like, where did they go? But that's what they do. They just move on.
Yeah.
So let's move on here.
So let's move on.
Let's move on.
To our another friend, a rabbit.
Yes, rabbit. Let's talk about rabbit. So rabbit is what we call choleric. And a choleric, they think there's a job to be done and I'm the one to do it. They love to work. They love to take charge. They're born leaders. They have a lot of energy, just like the sanguine. But their energy is directed into getting the job done. So that saying, my way or the highway, that's something they often live by. So they want to do it fast, too. They want movement.
So they can be very impatient.
They can be impatient, yeah.
Especially with other people who aren't on the same page or aren't going in the direction they want them to go.
Right. Right. They may be a bit insensitive. They may hurt other people's feelings and not realize it, and sometimes not even care. Right? They have a quick temper. They have a lot of fire. That's the thing about a choleric.
Yeah, and we were even noticing before that even the way Rabbit sits, he sort of takes up a lot of space. He's not really trying to make himself accommodate others. He's there to sort of spread out and, do his thing.
Right. He wants to be powerful.
Okay, I think I found my personality.
Found your spirit animal?
Wow, interesting.
Uh-huh. Right. So, our next character, our last character here is Eeyore. Now, Eeyore is what we call a melancholic. And a melancholic, they may think, well, I'll go first just to get it over with, right? So they really do have a big heart. Melancholics are often like the phlegmatic, usually a little on the quiet side. They often will go into a job where they can serve. like a nurse, like a doctor. Sometimes they make great artists.
They want to be helpful.
They're very sensitive. They're very sensitive. And that's probably their biggest plus. Now, on the opposite side of things, sometimes they get a little too into their pain.
They can be a little negative.
They can. A melancholic, they kind of walk around sometimes with their head down, right? It's like gravity is like pulling them down.
They see all the pain in the world and the suffering, and they feel sometimes overwhelmed by it. And as a melancholic child, it's very easy to hurt their feelings. Just as they're sensitive to others, they're also sensitive themselves. And so if you come on too strong to them, they can withdraw or become sort of weepy.
Yeah.
And what would hurt terribly a melancholic, perhaps a choleric wouldn't even notice.
That's right. And some of these two are more like opposites. Like, this one sometimes feels pulled down by gravity, like, oh, life is so hard. And this one feels like, oh, I'm light and bouncy. So they're kind of opposites in a way.
And this guy's more extroverted, and this guy's more introverted.
Right? And these two as well. This guy sometimes likes to think about the past. He's okay sitting and thinking about the past. This guy is looking to the future, like, let's get the job done. So in some ways, these temperaments can be opposites as well.
So what happens when a parent's temperament matches a child's temperament, or vice versa, when a parent's temperament doesn't match
Right.
a child's
Well, that can cause friction, can't it? Let's say you're a parent and you're getting your kids ready in the morning to go to school or to go somewhere, and you're in a hurry.
So
This is a common situation, right?
So now you're stressed.
You're stressed, and you're probably feeling a little irritated, maybe a little angry, and so without giving the phlegmatic, Winnie the Pooh, any warning, you say, grab your things, let's go. And they don't. As a matter of fact, they seem to slow down even more. Like, they like to take their time, and now it looks like they're not doing anything to help.
So they can appear very stubborn and resistive.
Yes, and that could make the parent even angrier, which they might yell again, and then it might make this guy even more
Dig his heels in.
not want to cooperate. Right. So that's what can happen with a phlegmatic. They really slow down.
So, as a parent, what should I do if I'm trying to get along with this young fellow,
Sure.
son or daughter of mine, what should I do?
Give them a heads up. Give them a warning. Like, hey, we're going to be leaving in 5 minutes. And kids don't have a great sense of time, but they'll get used to that prompt. Like, oh, that means, I need to start getting ready.
Right, and you might need to give them a much longer warning than another child. You might need to know, well, if we're going to leave at 7:30, by 7 o'clock, I better make sure that all these certain things are done and in place and that they have time to gather their thoughts.
Yes. Right? All right, let's say the same situation is happening and you have a sanguine child. So now you're saying, come on, grab your things, we gotta go. And he or she can't seem to find anything. They seem really disorganized. When I was a kid, they may have joked and said, oh, you'd lose your head if it wasn't attached, right? So they can't seem to think straight. They're not sure where things are. And it looks like they're trying to hold you up.
Right, that they're intentionally being sort of distracted and not paying attention to you.
Right, like they're not taking it seriously.
But the more that you stress them, the more distracted they become. So whatever their thing is, it sort of grows under stress.
That's right.
Okay, so how do I help this young one?
Well, again, if you can sort of,
Planning ahead is always helpful.
Planning ahead, some parents have like a little hourglass timer. You could try that. That might work especially well because that's a visual sense of time.
And you might give a little bit more, a certain type of support to a sanguine child where you might make sure that their things are in place the night before so they're easy to be able to be found. Also giving them enough of a warning so they don't feel pressured.
That's right. That's probably true for all these guys.
But in different ways.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, so now you have a choleric child. Oh, boy. So you're feeling probably irritated and rushed, and now you yell at the choleric, and they may yell back. This is the child that really does seem disrespectful.
Because they're extremely strong-willed in a more outward way. They lose their temper.
But they feel like you're really attacking them. And so their natural response is to attack back. And parents often think, well, they shouldn't do that, or they shouldn't be disrespectful. But actually, anger is a natural part of everyone, even kids. And it has its place, as long as it's, within the proper, not getting too crazy.
Mm-hmm. And so they might come back at you and say, well, why didn't you tell me earlier? You didn't even let us know that it was time to go. And so they become argumentative.
That's right. They're going to speak up. And so for them, to help them, you might give them a little choice, some kind of choice.
A little bit of power.
During the morning.
These guys need power and they need to feel important. So if you give them something to do, it needs to mean something. It can't be just, try to get them off your back. So
remember, they need to be in charge for themselves.
And they can't be in charge when you're the parent, but you have to give them their own little fiefdom to be in charge of. So
sure, some little bit of power. Yeah.
So like clothing to wear, or what else?
Yeah.
Yeah, you
What's
might give
for
them a
breakfast?
task that's going to be really helpful. Could you make sure all the lunches are on the table, and can you make sure that the back door is locked? Giving them something to check in on or make them feel like they're contributing is useful for them, instead of trying to get into a power struggle with them. And later in our episodes, we're going to talk about power struggles.
And if you know that your child is going to get angry, not approaching them with so much anger yourself is a great way to not have them blow up.
So stay calm.
Yeah.
In the face of a
That's right.
of a choleric.
That's right. And then lastly, for the melancholics, you're in a hurry, let's go. They may feel like, oh gosh.
Like you're blaming them, or it's all their fault.
They may take it personally, like, gosh, I'm just a failure. So they'll feel even more depressed and dragged down by things.
As if you're disappointed in them.
That's right. And so they may seem, who knows, they may seem scattered, they may seem quiet.
They sort of withdraw, or they start to cry, and they feel overwhelmed, and they feel like, this is impossible, and
yeah.
I'm not going to be able to be ready in time, and everyone's going to be mad at me, and that can turn into resentment even.
Right. Yeah, so for each of them, they have their strengths, they have their challenges.
Are children either one of these, or are they more combinations, would you say?
It's a little bit more like a combination, especially as they get older. When they're younger, they are a little easier, I think, to identify. But as they get older, life kind of calls for us to do a little bit of everything. Like you go to school, it's hard to go through the day and not talk to anybody. So if you're really quiet by nature, chances are you're going to talk a little bit, right? It's going to make you a little bit more like a tiger or a rabbit.
Yeah, and in this way of looking at temperaments, the thinking is that as people mature, they become more balanced. And they say that Christopher Robin is more the balance of the four. And I think we all see that. For myself, I was very quiet as a child, but as I've gotten older, I've been forced to sort of come out of my shell and to be, put my neck out more and risk a little bit more. And over time, as these temperaments try different aspects of themselves, they become more comfortable being a little bit more balanced.
Well, I'll put a summary up for everybody to look at when we're done with this segment. But you're telling me that I have to learn the temperaments of my kids, understand my own temperaments. I mean, this is going to be a major project, and I'm going to be brutal. What's in it for me as a parent?
Well, if you understand a little bit about yourself and your child, you can make those mornings a little smoother. It doesn't have to be a big argument. It doesn't have to be, yelling at your kids and what's wrong with you. And, it can go much more smoothly if you learn a little bit.
It's like anything else. If you're, say, a baseball player and you're getting ready to play in a big game, you're going to practice, and you're going to practice different scenarios with your teammates so that you're ready when the time comes to, to field whatever ball comes at you, or to, to throw this way and throw that way. So it's a skill that you learn. And I think as people think about their children, they'll naturally get a sense of which descriptions fit better And then you learn how to adapt and how to, I think you've talked before about a car.
Yeah, in the olden days before fuel injection, people had to really, fight to start their cars sometimes. And as you get to know your car, you get to know what it takes to make it start, right? Sometimes you got to give it a little gas and then you got to wait. And someone who tries to drive your car may not know that, and they may feel frustrated, like, I can't get it to work. But when you get to know your kids, you can get to know what works for them and what works for you.
Right, and then you can use it to make your life more enjoyable. Hi, welcome back. That was a lot to digest that we just sort of gave you to think about. And in the coming weeks, we're going to be thinking about a lot of things in detail. We'll be talking about parenting styles next time. We're going to talk about different climates in the home. Eventually, we're going to talk about power struggles, communication techniques, discipline, anger management, what happens when you've had trauma in your past. There's going to be a lot of interesting information I think you'll find helpful. So right now, before we wrap up and review things, I just want to point out that the environment matters, not just the emotional environment, but your physical environment. And you can create within your home a space that sort of lifts people up and makes them feel a little bit more present to what's going on in a positive way. So here we have a plant. When you bring things in from the outdoors, nature, it really helps you stay connected to what's going on with the seasons, what's going on in terms of growth, because nature mirrors children. I mean, it mirrors growth. And the kids can help you collect things. So here we just have a couple things that we've collected. We have here some smooth stones that I found in a creek a long time ago that I liked, and I just sort of hung on to them. We have a pine cone. We have some of these seeds. These are called samaras. They're like winged seeds, and I think people call them helicopter seeds too. They sort of they twirl as they come down. So if you let your kids go outside, or you go outside on a walk and you find an interesting leaf or a stick or something that you like, you can come in and you can make a little space that I think we said before, it's a little bit like a Zen garden, or just something to sort of
like a beautiful, peaceful little area.
A place to look, and your kids might really be interested in noticing that. Another important thing is to note the seasons. When I was growing up, we had a bulletin board, and on that bulletin board we would bring in things and sort of create pictures that reflected the season outside, and I really enjoyed that as a kid. And as you know, as we talked earlier about mealtime, when I was growing up, we sang before we ate. That was our grace. When my mom was growing up, singing at the table would have been strictly forbidden. So that was something that she initiated that brought a lot of lightness to the meal, and then we would talk about our day and sometimes share problems. And I think that that type of sort of shifting from generation to generation is what's so interesting about being a parent. You can do things the things that you liked and you wanted to repeat, and you can change the things that you don't. So next time, we're going to be talking again about parenting styles and what is the emotional climate in the home. So we look forward to seeing you again.
If you have questions or comments, you can reach us at pamandjimshow.com.
Yeah, we'll be putting it up on the screen. So if you write in some questions, we'll try to answer them the next time, and we'll present new information that might, bring more questions or give you some ideas that might be useful. So thanks for coming.
Thank you.
So long.
Bye.